The hockey world has been waiting for one answer, and Connor McDavid may have just delivered the biggest signal yet about his future. Not with a dramatic press conference, not with a social media post, and not with a signed contract, but through the way he's talking about the Edmonton Oilers, the timing of his decision, and what league insiders are hearing behind the scenes. Here's what I'm hearing. McDavid has made it clear that he's going to take his time before making the biggest decision of his career, and that announcement alone changes the entire conversation around the NHL. If you've been following this story closely, you already know why it's such a massive deal. Connor McDavid isn't just another superstar approaching an important contract decision. He's the face of the league, the captain of the Edmonton Oilers, and a player many consider the best in the world. Whenever someone of that caliber leaves even a little uncertainty about his future, every general manager, every fan base, and every analyst starts paying attention. The latest information I'm hearing is that there isn't a sense of panic inside the Oilers organization, at least not publicly. Team officials have consistently said they'll begin serious contract discussions whenever McDavid feels the time is right. That's a notable position to take because most franchises would prefer to eliminate uncertainty as early as possible. Instead, Edmonton appears willing to let its captain dictate the timeline. That tells me two things. First, the organization understands exactly how valuable McDavid is. Second, they know applying pressure probably isn't the smartest strategy with a player who has earned the right to make this decision on his own terms. What really caught my attention wasn't just the timing, it was the wording. McDavid has continued to emphasize that winning remains his top priority. He has spoken about wanting to win in Edmonton. At the same time, he hasn't rushed to publicly promise that he'll spend the rest of his career there. Some fans hear those comments and feel encouraged. Others hear the same words and become even more nervous because there's still no definitive commitment. That's why this story refuses to disappear. Every interview becomes headline news. Every comment gets analyzed. Every pause during an answer becomes its own discussion online. People around the league believe this isn't simply about money. Connor McDavid has already established himself as one of hockey's highest-paid stars. Another lucrative contract seems inevitable whenever negotiations begin. The bigger question is whether he believes the Oilers can deliver the one thing still missing from his resume, a Stanley Cup championship. From what I've been told, that's the question driving almost every conversation around this situation. Winning. Not endorsements, not individual awards, winning. And honestly, that shouldn't surprise anyone who's watched McDavid throughout his career. Individual accomplishments have piled up year after year. Hart Trophy wins, Art Ross Trophy titles, highlight reel plays that seem almost impossible. Yet the one achievement every great player ultimately gets judged by remains a Stanley Cup. My take on this is that McDavid understands exactly how history works. Years from now, nobody is going to remember how many incredible regular season rushes he produced in October. They're going to remember whether he led a team to hockey's ultimate prize. That's why every offseason matters now. Every roster decision matters. Every move by Edmonton's front office gets evaluated through one simple question. Does this improve the Oilers enough to convince Connor McDavid that the championship window remains open? League sources continue to indicate that Edmonton believes the answer is yes. The organization still views itself as a contender despite the disappointment of falling short. Management has shown confidence publicly, and they haven't given any indication that they're preparing for life without their captain. That confidence is important, but confidence and certainty aren't always the same thing. Nothing is official yet, but here's what I'm hearing from around the league. Rival executives are watching this situation incredibly closely. Not because they expect McDavid to suddenly demand a trade tomorrow. There's no credible reporting suggesting that's happening. Instead, they're watching because players of this magnitude almost never become available. Even the smallest possibility forces teams to think ahead. Imagine you're running another NHL franchise. Wouldn't you quietly monitor every development? Wouldn't you ask your hockey operations staff to evaluate what a future pursuit might look like, even if the odds remain extremely low? Of course you would. That's simply smart management. It doesn't mean McDavid is leaving. It means every organization understands what kind of opportunity could exist if circumstances ever changed. Here's how I read this situation. Edmonton still controls the narrative more than many people realize. McDavid has repeatedly spoken positively about the city, the organization, and his teammates. He's never publicly suggested that he wants out. In fact, much of what he's said points in the opposite direction. He has consistently emphasized that his focus remains on winning with the Oilers. That's a meaningful distinction that often gets lost once rumors start spreading across social media. One rumor leads to another, then another. Before long, speculation starts sounding like fact. That's where it's important to separate confirmed reporting from fan imagination. Over the past several weeks, you've probably seen stories linking McDavid to different franchises if he were ever to leave Edmonton. Philadelphia has been mentioned in some speculative discussions. Montreal has also appeared in various conversations. But here's the key point. Those discussions are driven largely by outside speculation rather than confirmed negotiations. I'm told there is no credible indication that the Oilers are actively shopping Connor McDavid. There is also no confirmed report that McDavid is asked to leave Edmonton. Those are very different stories from the ones that sometimes gain traction online. That doesn't make the speculation meaningless, though. People around the league naturally ask these questions because of what McDavid represents. If the best player in hockey ever reached a point where he became available, it would instantly become the biggest story in professional sports. General managers would rearrange entire organizations. Prospects would suddenly become trade chips. Draft picks would lose their sentimental value overnight. That's simply the reality whenever a generational player enters any form of uncertainty. Another reason this story continues dominating headlines is because of Leon Draisaitl's presence. For years, the McDavid-Draisaitl partnership has been viewed as one of the most dangerous combinations in the NHL. As long as both players remain together, Edmonton believes it has a legitimate opportunity to compete for championships. My take is that separating those two stars would represent one of the biggest shifts the modern NHL has seen. That's exactly why fans react so emotionally whenever new reports surface. Every interview becomes another clue. Every management comment becomes another clue. Every offseason move becomes another clue. And every time Connor McDavid speaks publicly, millions of hockey fans immediately start asking the same question. Is this another sign that he'll stay? Or is he simply keeping every option open while focusing on hockey first? From everything I'm hearing, patience remains the defining word. McDavid appears determined not to rush the biggest decision of his career. The Oilers appear willing to respect that timeline. The rest of the NHL has no choice but to wait and watch. And while that uncertainty may frustrate fans looking for immediate answers, it also explains why this has become one of the most closely followed stories in hockey. Until McDavid finally makes his long-term intentions clear, every comment, every interview, and every development will continue shaping the conversation across the league. One thing I think gets overlooked in all of this is just how unusual Connor McDavid's position really is. Most elite players eventually reach a point where they have to decide between loyalty and opportunity. That's not a criticism of any organization, it's simply the reality of professional sports. Windows to win championships don't stay open forever. Rosters change, salary cap pressures build, key veterans get older, younger players become more expensive. Every contender eventually faces difficult decisions, and the Oilers are no exception. From what I've been told, nobody inside Edmonton is treating this as a countdown to an inevitable departure. In fact, there's still genuine belief within the organization that McDavid wants to finish what he started. The message coming from the club has been remarkably consistent. They believe in their core, they believe they can compete, and they believe their captain wants to win in Edmonton. That confidence matters because it shapes every move the organization makes this offseason. If management believed McDavid had already made up his mind to leave, you'd probably see a very different strategy. Instead, the Oilers continue operating like a team that expects to contend. That's an important signal. At the same time, here's how I see the situation. Believing you can contend and proving you can contend are two very different things. The pressure on Edmonton isn't really about convincing Connor McDavid with words anymore. It's about convincing him with results. League sources indicate that's exactly why every roster move is being scrutinized so closely around the NHL. Every signing, every trade, every coaching decision gets viewed through the same lens. Does this move bring the Oilers closer to lifting the Stanley Cup? Because if the answer is yes, it strengthens Edmonton's position. If the answer is no, the outside speculation only grows louder. And that's where fans sometimes underestimate just how much pressure comes with being the face of a franchise. McDavid isn't simply deciding where he wants to play hockey. Whatever decision he eventually makes will shape the direction of the Oilers, influence the plans of dozens of other NHL teams, and become one of the defining moments of this era of hockey. That's an enormous responsibility for any player. People around the league believe that McDavid understands the weight of that decision better than anyone. That's one reason many insiders aren't surprised that he's refusing to rush into anything. A choice this significant deserves careful thought, especially when it affects teammates, coaches, management, and one of the NHL's most passionate fan bases. One thing that has impressed me throughout this entire process is how disciplined McDavid has remained publicly. He hasn't fueled rumors with emotional comments. He hasn't taken shots at the organization. He hasn't created unnecessary drama. Instead, he's consistently returned to the same message: winning comes first. That consistency is one reason I think some of the more dramatic rumors should be viewed with caution. Nothing is official yet, but here's what I'm hearing. There is still a major gap between speculation created outside the organization and confirmed information coming from people directly involved. That's an important distinction because, in today's media environment, rumors can spread around the hockey world in minutes. Once enough people repeat the same theory, it can start sounding like established fact, even when no reliable reporting supports it.